previously on the psychology of entrepreneurship.
It's so interesting, even presenting this as a question, solving the world's most meaningful problems, and I love it. And at the same time, it's there's the overwhelm of even trying to consolidate into having a meaningful conversation, because you can go down so many different rabbit holes.
Our problems that we consider our problems are actually probably just inconveniences, and if we're gonna solve the real problems of the world, we have to have global collaboration.
I think it's really important to my Black people to not make it everybody else's responsibility to put us on stage. I think that we need to raise our hands and put ourselves on the stage.
It's nefarious, man. Like, the brain works in fucked up ways.
The mind is one of the most deceiving, manipulative pieces of equipment, flesh, human bodies on earth. I never have trusted my brain.
All of that weight lives in your head, and you are the decision maker.
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
Hi, it's Ronsley. If this is your first volume, welcome. This is a weekly series where I go inside the mind of an entrepreneur, artist, athlete, academic to decipher what is the psychology of our decisions. I'm Australian, and I'd like to acknowledge our traditional custodians of country where I live and work. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge our continuous connection and contribution to land, sea, and community. So if you haven't listened to the previous volume, we've got a club on Clubhouse. It's called The Psychology of Entrepreneurship, and you can find it by going to joinclubhouse.com/club/The Psychology of Entrepreneurship. Now, on this club, or in this club, we have lots of really good events, and we've had one about money and freedom. We've had one around the art and science of saying no. We have podcasters around a campfire talking about tricks and trends. We did trends last week. And there's all these really awesome events that I think you should be part of. So go to joinclubhouse.com/@Ronsley and follow me, and you'll get notified every time we create a room on there. So to that point, do you know how amazing it is to get different perspectives into a conversation? Well, until recently, it has been extremely hard to make that happen. Not necessarily hard in the sense that we didn't have the tools, it was just difficult to organize. But now, because of Clubhouse, at the end of January, we had a conversation around a campfire on Clubhouse titled Use Your Voice, Make an Impact. And we were talking mainly with Philip McKernan. And this is where we begin. Philip McKernan from Volume 1 is the first voice you'll hear, and he's talking about the conversations we tend to avoid. This is Philip McKernan.
Any human being in the world is avoiding the most important conversation they need to be having. And I think if we're all honest and we sit back and talk about that or accept that, I think there is a conversation, at least one, maybe more, that we just don't want to have. And our brain is doing an incredible, majestic job in cultivating the rationale, the reasons, the necessity for us not to step into those conversations. But I think there's a conversation that we're almost in many cases unaware of, and that is what I call the very first conversation that needs to happen before any other important external conversation, and that is the one with ourselves. And for many people, that sounds like a fucking stupid idea, for want of a better term. So I think having honest conversations with ourselves. I mean, our company, we don't call our coaching and stuff after it, but Braveheart Media is our company. And there's a reason we use the word brave. But I think we put way too much emphasis on bravery in the world as it relates to actions. I'm not saying that actions are not brave, but we just, we look at the end result and we think that the end result is brave. But I think real bravery is when a man or a woman stops and asks themselves, is this the life I want to live? Is this the work I want to do? Is this the conversation I want to be putting out into the world? Is this the book I really want to write? Or am I writing this book because I think it'll sell? There's nothing wrong with that. But having the courage to stop and just have that dialogue with yourself is really, 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 really important.
And then Philip asks us to think about the idea of impact and making a difference in the world.
Is this idea of impact and making a difference in the world. And I'd love people to contextualize what making a difference is for them, because we're surrounded by all these iconic, socially, I suppose, promoted examples of impact. And in many cases, the ones that are being bantered around are significant, or what feels significant, or more significant than the ideas that we perhaps ourselves have. In other words, we hear today or tomorrow that Bill Gates has donated $1 billion to somewhere. Again, amazing. I'm not knocking it. But then what sometimes that does is it inadvertently challenges the impact that we want to make. We want to start by writing the first line of a poem. We want to start by writing the first paragraph of a speech. We want to, start by, coaching our first client. And suddenly we look at this impact externally and it feels like we've got to climb a goddamn mountain. Not any mountain, Mount Everest, in order to achieve the impact we want. And the one question I get more than probably any, is how do I stand on a stage and speak in front of 5 or 6 or 7,000 people like you do? And by the way, they're not my typical audiences, but on the rare occasion, that's the size of audience I have spoken in front of. So I'm not trying to impress people, but rather impress upon them this idea. And I always start with I always give exactly the same answer. And that is start with one person, start with one client, start with one coaching client, start with one. And they go, generally speaking, it's like, no, you didn't answer my question. And I go, no, I answered your question. You just did not like the answer. And, if we think about a lot of the movie stars that we either look up to, or we put on pedestals, or we just enjoy, or whatever, all of those actors, for the most part, started in shitty movies that they'd rather buy the rights to and close down. Trains, Planes, and Automobiles. There's 2 primary actors in that most people recognize, John Candy and Steve Martin. And I always say to people, do you remember Kevin Bacon? And they go, no. Kevin Bacon's in the opening scene and he has about a 3 or 4 or 5 second part and he doesn't even speak. But we don't want to see those stories. We don't want to see the graft. We want to get to the end game.
In January, we released multiple volumes on the psychology of entrepreneurship about entrepreneurs and artists that were making their impact from behind bars. Go to thepsychologyoфentrepreneurship.com to find out more and the previous volumes. But Philip had something to say about his interactions with prisoners.
And I remember going into prison and actually going in with telling myself this bullshit story that I'm going to go in and I'm not going to judge. In fact, I'm not even judging before I go in. And of course, all of that was just complete horseshit. It may have been not very conscious and very, very, may have been below the surface. But what I realized on that initial day is that I can only I'll speak for myself rather than trying to generalize it and tell people, because I hope that is not what I want to get across here today. I went in, and the reason that I had this finger kind of pointing and my arm extended, even though that's a metaphor for how I was kind of externally pushing these, in this case, men away, was the greater distance I can create through the lens of my judgment between me and them, the more I was telling myself how I wasn't like them. And the reason I was doing that is because my soul and my heart knew goddamn well that the difference between me and them is nothing more than a decision, or maybe a series of decisions or circumstances in which we find ourselves. I'm not here to justify or rationalize their behavior. But when you begin to understand their stories, you begin to understand their actions. I have been in organizations. I have been in front of people who have finally broken down from the, I suppose, the facade and the masks they've been wearing to allow people to see who they really are and why they are that way. For somebody to turn around and go, I like this guy. Where's this girl been? Because honestly, up to date, I thought you were an asshole. I've seen that in organizations and I've seen it in one-to-one coaching sessions. It's not until we let people into who we are and our why and what moves us, importantly, do we actually get to move other people.
A 2010 study from Tim Judge shows what we've known all along. When people go to school for something that they don't enjoy in hopes that they'll get a well-paying job, they will not enjoy that job. No matter the amounts of money the participants of this study were making, they still reported being unhappy. and some expressed regret that they didn't pursue a hobby or interest that sparked joy instead. The results of the study concluded that the correlation between salary and overall happiness is extremely weak. In short, money does not buy happiness.
This conversation was just getting going, and Cliff Ravenscroft, who has helped thousands, actually tens of thousands of people use their voice, he starts to talk about how we need to ask these questions to pursue our passions and curiosities to find out our true identity and purpose.
The two most important questions we'll ever be asked or we'll ever ask of ourselves is, who am I and why am I here? And interestingly enough, I thought I had that all figured out before I ever started podcasting, but actually podcasting and the journey that I've been on in the process of the last 15 years has helped me actually truly discover my real identity and why I'm here and what my purpose in this world is. And so what's interesting, it was in the process of pursuing passions and curiosities. You know, people talk about this thing called the bright, shiny object syndrome, as if we all need to avoid anything that interests us or anything that we're curious, because everything's a distraction and you have to just stay on focus, stay on task. And it reminds me of those nuns in Catholic school that tried to swap me with their rulers when I was in Catholic school. And I'm like, that's not how life is supposed to be. And so it is interesting that my wife and I started podcasting about the TV show Lost because we were passionate about a TV show. We didn't care if we had 5 subscribers. I just wanted to create a podcast about a TV show that I loved. And surprisingly enough, over a series of months, we grew an audience in the tens of thousands, and people were loving it. And we couldn't understand why. I couldn't understand why people were loving it, but some people were loving it.
And then Terry from the audience joined in talking about money because money and profit helps us make a bigger impact.
Money is an extrinsic reward, and extrinsic rewards can crowd out your intrinsic motivation to do something. So when we start to pursue things that we love, we've got this, it's almost like this cognitive dissonance that happens, this sort of internal battle. I was working with a photographer a year or so ago, and she had similar ideas where she's like, it's wrong to make money from the thing that I like doing. And so you really have to spend a lot of time unraveling those things and I guess questioning those assumptions, where they come from, whose voice was it, how true is it, how many people's lives confirm it, how many can deny it. Because basically those beliefs, we go through our lives, it's almost like a form of confirmation bias. So if I hold that as a belief to be true, I want to go through the world and collect information and evidence that confirms that belief. And so I think for me, it's a journey of collecting disconfirming evidence to prove that that's not the case. So for me, a lot of the time I have to sort of say to people, whose life invalidates that belief? Go and collect more evidence to basically shake that belief loose, because you've held on to it and then you've acted on it and you've got your results from that.
Belief. And while I was digesting what Terry just said, Philip starts to talk about the conflict between investing in ideas just because they are profitable and not because we value them.
I think the challenge for me personally is I held on to a narrative that I needed to make enough money before I could, go and give myself permission to experiment and do what I loved. And I see that all the time. And we tend not to be able to put a value on the things that we do naturally. Hence the reason it's very, very difficult or easier for us to sell a bottle of wine and charge a premium than it is to charge for a talk or for a coaching session or some sort of consultancy or advisory, etc. But I always remember one client who came to me, and I think we need to push back on this idea that people, have to make money. And I appreciate that, given the choice between temporarily going and doing what I love, and potentially starving my family, or doing something I fucking hate for a living and putting food on the table. Of course I would temporarily take the thing, but I'd like to think that I would find and create the space to carve out some time to at least play with or experiment with, even an hour a month. And I also think we use money as an excuse not to launch the thing into the world that we want to. So, for example, there's a company out there called Techstars, which is a startup, an incubator, one of the largest, I believe, in the world, an accelerator that works primarily in the tech startup space for the most part. And one of the founders there, we had a great chat about this idea of under the umbrella of one last talk and one last startup and one last book and all these things that we're beginning to play with, is this idea that when you push somebody to consider that if this was your one last startup, is this the one that you would do? And what you'll find is, and I find this when I really work deeply with people and I push them hard, they have something in their left hand that they really think they should put out into the world because people have asked for it. They have the thing in their right hand that they think is monetizable at a much more accelerated rate. But they've every single person I've worked with has this idea in their back pocket that is the greatest expression of who they are. That is the thing that means the absolute most in the world to them. But it often dies with them because launching that, failing at doing something we don't really want to do is passable. But failing at something we are destined to do, or they want to desperately bring into the world, or they want to create, or they want to help, feels like a bottomless pit. It feels like there is nowhere to go. And when you get close to working with somebody that's getting close to their gift, not their talent, we can make money using our talent all the time, but too many of us walk this earth executing on our talents and never deeply honoring our gifts. And I believe, to my core, when you find the thing you're destined to do, you cannot fail. And I know that pisses people off. And I don't care because I've seen it work too many times. When you find the thing you're here to do, it is such a simple thing, typically. And it's such an obvious thing, typically. And it's such a natural thing, typically. But there are billions of people in the world, and maybe only hundreds want that from you. But that can be enough to sustain a life, both monetarily and from a fulfillment standpoint.
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
Our aim with this audio documentary has always been to build a strong community of entrepreneurs and creatives to provide a space where they can use their voice to share their authenticity with the world. As a valued listener, your voice matters too. We love to hear your feedback and ideas, so don't be shy to let us know how we're doing in the ratings and comments. If you have a message for our production team or know someone who would be a perfect fit as a guest, you can find out more information on how to share your input at psychologyofentrepreneurship.com.
I know this for a fact. Philip gets really annoyed that we don't recognize our gifts. He talks about how we need to let the good voices of people we often don't know guide us towards our true gifts.
We often don't recognize the things that we're brilliant at doing or the things that we're naturally gifted at doing. It's often the people around us. And are we willing or able to hear their voices? And I want to just give you one quick example. I did a best man speech years and years ago. Dyslexic kid. Cliff, you and I have a similar story in this regard. Teacher is cruel. One teacher looked at me and said, "You're going to amount to nothing in this room. You amount to nothing in this room, and you're going to amount to nothing out there." And she pointed out the window to life. And when you're 14 and 15 or 16, you start to believe that shit. You start to believe that these authorities actually know more than you do. And maybe they're right. And I was asked to do a best man speech in a little town called Lucan, just outside Dublin City in Ireland. And I remember saying yes to my best friend and then realizing there was going to be 250 people at this wedding. And I almost puked on the spot. And I contemplated breaking my leg or my arm so I could get out of it. That's how sick to my core it was. And lo and behold, I get to this hotel, and would you believe it? It was an old theater, and it had a goddamn stage. And lo and behold, and the minute I walked in, I just knew, not because there was tables. I said, "Jeff, where's the speeches, or where's the top table?" He goes, "Oh, it's on the stage because we have to put it there because there's not enough room on the main floor." And again, I nearly vomited. And then I decided I'm going to go out. I'm going to be the funniest guy that has ever done a best man speech. And then I oscillated to, you know what, no, I'm going to try and be smart and intelligent and calculated. And then I got so exhausted. I got so sick and tired of myself. I just showed up and said, "Fuck this." And I stood on stage and I opened my heart and I shared about the bride and the groom in a way that I didn't expect, but just opened up and let it go. And at the end of the talk, and please don't take this as me boasting, but rather trying to illustrate a point, I got a standing ovation. That was one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever experienced because I didn't want the attention. And as I walked off the stage, a young man who I don't know who he is, and I've never met him since, walked up to me, put his arms around me with tears pouring down his face and said, if I ever get married, I don't know this man. He said, will you be my best man? And in typical loving Irish fashion, I looked him straight in the eyes and I said, will you go fuck off? Meaning, don't be ridiculous. And of course, he's not asking me to be his best man, but he saw something in me I was unwilling or did not want to recognize in myself. And if you're able to let those voices in, people will guide you when you're lost. They'll see something in you that you cannot or do not want to see in yourself. And I encourage all of us to allow those people to penetrate the guard that we have. And they're typically the people who don't know us, because your mother is going to tell you you're great despite the fact that, or good looking, despite the fact that you're ugly. And I'm sure Ronsley's mother told him he was good looking, and of course she was lying. But the point I'm trying to make is it's often the people that we don't know see the thing in us that is the gift rather than the talent.
So I was born on the ugly tree and hit all the branches on the way down. And so when I was 8, my mother thought I was so hideous that she threw me to the wolves, and the wolves, well, they threw me back. And that's why they say that I have a face for podcasting. And while you're imagining the wolves throwing me back to my mother as a child, Cliff, Ravenscroft that is, starts to talk about how we need to be driven by our calling and meet our financial needs without having money take over our mindset.
I have seen so many people do exactly what Philip said. It's like, oh, I'm going to start this with the intent. I've got to find a way to make money. And I have, over the course of about 12 years, I helped a lot of people successfully launch podcasts. But the problem that I found is that the ones who had the greatest struggles were the ones who, quote unquote, had to generate income to put food on the table or to make their mortgage or to meet their other financial needs and or obligations in life. And my recommendation for anyone and everyone who wants to get out there and find work that they love to do and get paid extremely well to do that work, I encourage them to go get a job. Go get your needs financially met doing something it is that you're already excellent at. Because if you're struggling to make money to do what it is that you are doing and what you feel called to do in this world, it's because you're new to it and it's going to take some time. And you can't put so much pressure on generating money because it puts you in a mindset of scarcity and it puts you in a mindset of transactions. And so I discourage people from going out and generating lots of income from coaching people if that's what they feel called to do. It's like, listen, I want to create a podcast where I can be a thought leader and I want to have people buy my coaching program, join my paid mastermind group, whatever the case may be. And I'm going to do everything I can to get people to know, like, and trust me so that I can convince them so that I can put food on my table. And it's like, no. That puts you'll be in a position where you'll take on people that shouldn't be working with you. They're not the right clients for you, but because you need money, you'll end up doing things you wouldn't have done otherwise. So I'm torn between people who want to pursue podcasting or fill in the blank, whatever it is that they want to pursue, so that they can generate money. But at the same time, I believe anybody should be able to find a way. If it's in alignment with who they are, they'll eventually find a way that money they won't be able to keep money from flowing to them eventually. So my recommendation for people who are starting out, go get your financial needs met somewhere else. Go get yourself a job, 40, 50 hours a week, get all of your financial needs met, and tap into the work, the content, the stuff that you feel called to do. Do it with no strings attached. Become confident in who you are. Serve just the right people that you're most called to serve in this world. And eventually you'll figure out the business plan, the business model will come to you over time after you try different things that do and don't work. But don't rely on your mortgage company or your mortgage payment to be paid or your rent payment to be paid. And don't rely food on the table to be put onto the table by getting into something you haven't been doing up until now. So go get your financial needs met and go out and create and serve the world until you start to see the financial resources just automatically attract themselves to you.
Studies have shown that making a lasting impact on someone's life is much easier than you may think. And it's not just beneficial for the person or people that you're impacting either. These studies indicate that volunteering time, money, or energy for a cause that you feel is worthy boosts happiness, a sense of well-being, and even overall health. A team of sociologists tracked 2,000 Americans over a 5-year period and found that the ones who described themselves as very happy volunteered at least 5.8 hours a month. Researchers concluded that giving back may give individuals a mental boost by providing them with a neurochemical sense of reward.
So Philip chimes in with not needing to make money out of everything at the beginning of your journey, just experimenting and learning from each experience being the key part of enjoying the journey.
We've lost this idea. I am just bombarded with people who want to monetize something, not in the next 12 months, not the next 6 weeks, but they want to monetize it yesterday. That they want to start, coaching or writing a book or whatever it happens to be. And when did we stop this idea of doing something purely for the fun of it? I started coaching in a pub in Ireland, not because pubs are the only buildings in Ireland, despite the rumors. It's because I couldn't afford a meeting in Ireland, despite. And I would sit upstairs in this little landing area. We'd order a cup of tea each, and I would coach somebody for an hour. And it was a hobby. It was a fun thing. It was my way of experimentation. It was my way of stepping into the world. Was it good, bad, or different? Who knows? All I can tell you is if the people I sat in front of got 1% of the gift they gave to me, I at least I hope they got 1%. But that's what sent me on my career, and I've created an entire, obsession with it. But it's, again, this idea of just giving yourself permission to play with something without the need to build a business around it. And I think if more of us did that, more of those things would lead to not just things that would change our world, but change the world for the better.
And then we had this beautiful lady share this story.
I didn't find myself in my voice in my native language, Polish. I was always very talkative, but I kind of didn't feel understood. I always felt like my heart doesn't, it's kind of somewhere else. So I was all over the place. Then I was running away from my shit. And then I found my purpose, actually, after moving from the UK to New York, after running away from the UK to New York. It was a hard way of finding myself because it wasn't an American dream at all. But anyway, so when it comes to that voice, it was messy. It wasn't structured. I didn't know what's going on with my life. I didn't have anyone who I could trust, who could actually help me, to find my way. But because I had this need to express myself, it was messy and uncomfortable. And there were many people that I told my truth and they shouldn't know it because it wasn't the right person to say it. But I took that risk. Through that, I found myself. And through that, I actually found my purpose in helping others. And actually, which is bizarre. And I just realized that, I think a few years ago, already being into coaching, that I became a trainer in neuro-linguistic programming in a language that is not my native, it's not my language. That's fucking crazy, guys. And my language is not even perfect. I still make, grammar mistakes. I still make spelling mistakes. Sometimes I'm all over the place with my story, but I'm freaking helping people because I overcame my shit. I overcame perfection. I'm so up for being imperfectly perfect and just, sharing my gifts. So I love every single story that is showing that breakthrough point and discomfort of becoming yourself. And I understand that some people don't resonate with the way I talk and the way I share, but I know that I'm here to add value, right? So I'm clear about my intention. And when I hear that in other people's voices, and when I know someone is looking for help or is giving the value, that resonates with me and it's pulling me towards that person.
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
Coming up on the Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
The money is one of the most broken things that we have right now, and it touches everybody's lives.
you don't ever want to find yourself in a position where the government has to rule how you feel about yourself, your money, your family, your choices, your aspirations.
That conversation has been a little slice of heaven. So we're going to do more of those. And if you're interested to hear them live and join us live, and we would love to hear your voice in whatever capacity it allows us to, please follow the Psychology of Entrepreneurship Club on Clubhouse and also follow me at Ronsley. It would be amazing to get you on and get your perspective on different things. In the meantime, go have fun.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
This is a Must Amplify production. Special thanks to every guest expert that has appeared on the show. Editing, voiceovers, and sound design by Kaylee Bonnyman and Tiago Vega. Guest research by Jenna Elliott. Content by Corinne Castles. Project managed by the legend that is Kaylee Bonnyman. Produced and hosted by me, Ronsley Vaz. For more episodes and way to listen, go to mustamplify.com/POE.
Love the polished audio docuseries style of this podcast, The Psychology of Entrepreneurship? At We Are Podcast, you can learn how to create a similar style for your own show. This revolutionary virtual event assembles podcasters, entrepreneurs, and marketers in one spot, so you're able to learn from the masters. Head straight to wearepodcast.com to reserve your spot at our next event.